When I originally sat down to make this script, I had every intention of producing a standard review of a season that I actually quite like. Season 3 of OG might not feature my favorite Chapter 1 map or loot pool, but it's the first season that feels like a complete Chapter 1 experience. The reason I don't want to spend 8 to 10 minutes gushing over all the great changes this season introduced is because this mode honestly doesn't deserve the praise. To say that Fortnite OG is in a poor state right now is an understatement, and due to Epic's neglect of this mode, they have truly tainted what should be an enjoyable experience. So instead of glazing this lazy shell of a Chapter 1 recreation that Epic has the audacity to call OG, I will tackle everything that hinders this mode and ultimately explain why Fortnite OG does not hold up. Bots genuinely kill this mode. While I talked about bots already, and my goal here isn't to just rehash issues I've already discussed, I would be remiss if I didn't address it once more, if nothing else at least for the sake of critical redundancy. I will stand by the idea that Chapter 1 remains the best time period in Fortnite's history, solely because of how authentic each match felt with 100 real players. Ever since then, playing pubs is a nightmarish experience, where the only way Epic can accommodate the monotonous pattern of looking for signs of life in a PvP video game is by polluting the loot pool with a nauseating amount of unbalanced item rotation. Unfortunately for OG, it doesn't have item rotation due to its persistence with being exactly the same, except for when it isn't, and this means looking for other players is an unskippable cutscene that will remind you why reload is far superior to this hand-holding rancid monotony. Despite what some smooth brain out there may have you believe, there is nothing interesting or rewarding about fighting bots. I don't give a rat's ass if players were at one point as bad as these lobby fillers, because unless you were wearing a headband, drinking Red Bull, and your name rhymes with Tyler Ninja Blevins, then guess what? You were just as terrible as them too. Winning in Chapter 1 was not easy, and that's where the satisfaction came from when you finally did. The issue is Epic have cultivated a generation of players who have grown up with AI lobbies, essentially conditioning them to an experience with training wheels that many are unable to function without.
For school. Everything's crooked. Reality is poison. I want to go back. I hate this.
This is why despite OG launching with no AI, degenerate babies on Twitter cried over the mode being too challenging, and in the fastest response time to any criticism that will ever be made on the Epic development team, the decision was made to flood lobbies the very next day with AI. The issue since then has basically gone unaddressed. They recently increased the minimum number of real players from 25 to 45, only to silently revert it. And as of the time that I'm writing this script, there can now be as low as 8 real players in an OG lobby. 8 real players out of 100. What the fuck? This is by far the mode's biggest missed opportunity to offer something that actually stands apart when compared to the main BR. If you aren't interested in playing against solely real players, you would still have the option to play the Kindergartner playlist. And if you're someone who wants a more challenging experience, you could play the OG mode. Epic calls Fortnite a metaverse?
What a joke.
Because from where I stand, Epic seems too afraid to adapt anything that actually drives a unique experience. Genuine pussies. Storm circles in OG are broken. I don't know why, but at some point during Season 2, Epic made the brilliant decision to improve Fortnite OG with a quality of life change by removing the existing OG 9-phase storm circles and replacing them with the putrid 12-phase one. I am not kidding when I say that the first storm circle encompasses the entire Chapter 1 island. Now, I have always assumed that the 12-phase storm circle primarily exists to promote the accessibility of early game and mid game objectives. Players are more likely to interact with the new content like black markets or vaults if they have the appropriate time to do so. You know what all of Chapter 1 doesn't have? Mid game and early game objectives. Players don't really need additional time in a mode that doesn't have anything to fill that time with. And honestly, if they wanted to give a little bit of extra time to finish out fights in the early game, I can understand the incentive to make the first zone a bit more generous compared to the aggressive nature of the 9-phase storm, but there is no reason it should be as large as it is, as well as its subsequent zones decreasing its radius by only about the size of Salty Springs. The problem with this is players are given way too much time to fight in the early to mid game, and as a result, the remaining 10 or less players occupy a good fourth of the map. The footage you are seeing right now is not a creative map that doesn't get players, it's not a Project Era server on NA, and it's not edited gameplay. This is a real OG match of me searching a safe zone that I cannot see across that only has 3 other players, 2 of which were not real. Look, Epic, I know you're stretched thin with the multiple different modes that you have to maintain, and attempting to fix issues in this one is like cutting off a Hydra's head. it just creates more. So I'll make it very fucking simple for you. Just revert the storm circles in OG to the version that is actually OG. Ziplines, ascenders, and rifts are all in the builds mode, which I'm gonna be honest with you, doesn't really bother me. I understand that the criticism is that they don't belong in the builds mode because they aren't needed and they're not OG. I would be fine with their removal. In fact, I was fine when they weren't in the builds mode pre-season 3. But with the chapter 4 reworked training wheel storm circles, they're kind of a necessary evil. Rifts specifically are the only thing that makes finding players much less of a chore, and the mode is quite unplayable without them. Yes, they are obnoxious for the same reason that all rotation is. Players just run with it. Like, the majority of the players left playing OG are very clearly employed and have spent their little time playing this game, memorizing every single rift location, and will pinball between them when a fight gets a little too risky. And if that's not cancer enough, these little rats will build bases surrounding them so that they can get out of jail in case someone tries to fight them in a PvP game. I know he's sitting on that fucking rift. Yup, I fucking knew it. Look, this is not something I really care about that much. I think it should even be left in if they're going to double down on the new storm circle changes. I just think it's funny that an unnecessary feature became somewhat necessary because of a quote-unquote quality of life change. Zero builds is a nightmare in Fortnite OG. I feel like this doesn't require a deep explanation. Chapter 1 was not built during a time period where zero builds existed, and as a result, the loot pool, map, and lack of movement make the mode somewhat unplayable. To give a little bit of glaze to Epic, a good number of modern features like the new movement are implemented in this mode. This improves the experience of playing Chapter 1 without heavily tampering with the gameplay as a whole. What I don't understand is how inconsistently Epic applies this logic. Despite zero builds desperately needing item rotation, there is none because it didn't exist during this season. Like, sure, there's impulses and launch pads, which now can be placed using materials, but that's it. The mode already has an endless number of inconsistencies as a Chapter 1 adaptation, so why is this the hill they're willing to die on? It wouldn't even require adding items that don't exist in Chapter 1. Reload uses the grappler and shockwaves for its item rotation, both of which are present in Chapter 1, and that's a modern mode. Oh, but you see, shockwaves and grapplers weren't added until Season 5, so adding them back now wouldn't be OG.
Fuck you.
Well, guess what, Epic? Reboot vans weren't in the game until Season 8, so why are they in now? What about the slurp juice change? I mean, sure, it's better, but that's not OG. Or let's get real technical here. What about first shot accuracy? I mean, that wasn't added until Season 3, but we had it prior to that point. What gives, Epic? That's not OG. This doesn't even scratch the surface of the countless number of changes within the way that items work that functionally makes them completely different from their Chapter 1 counterparts. But for some reason, these dipshits draw the line at item rotation. Don't get me wrong, I love that Fortnite OG doesn't have a disgusting quantity of rotation in builds, but zero builds specifically needs it. Instead, zero builds gets porta bunkers, an item that was added in Chapter 3 and spawns halfway in the ground every time you use it. No one can convince me this mode gets playtesting. The number of bugs in Fortnite OG is sickening, and the best way I can convey to you how actually broken this mode is by listing off a good number of the bugs I in the community noticed that aren't overly pedantic issues. Shout out to AliJax on Twitter. This man has an entire thread dedicated to pointing out inconsistencies and bugs in this mode, and I only handpicked the ones I found to be especially annoying. Let's begin. The TAC SMG has basically no firing audio, features the watered down statistics, and has been completely disabled at this point. Some bushes on the map flicker for whatever reason. There's a bug where vending machines can only have shotgun shells in them. The mag sound effects you hear in the final bullets has global attenuation, meaning the literal entire match hears it no matter where you are. The LMG and burst AR have the wrong recoil and spread. The scoped AR has the wrong recoil and spread. The suppressed SMG has the wrong headshot multiplier and spread. The remote explosives do 100 damage instead of 70. The pump shotgun uses the Chapter 2 spread, which is larger, and features damage statistics that don't exist at any point in time during Chapter 1. The TAC shotgun also has the wrong damage and spread. All shotgun structure damage is too low. The pistol icon and model are from Chapter 2. This one is especially weird. The SCAR uses the Chapter 2 model, the Chapter 1 icon, and the Chapter 1 textures. What? The low-tier versions of the assault rifle still use the Chapter 2 weapon icon. The hand cannon features this weapon icon when it's supposed to look like this. Where the fuck did they even find this? Some issues that weren't directly mentioned that I found include rifts not appearing when players use them, the gray tac shotgun is missing and the gray pump is still in the game, and the final one I noticed is this weird echo effect that can sometimes play throughout the entire match.
Oh, it's not dead. Moving around.
This list goes on and on of countless inconsistencies and bugs that plague this mode. And look, I want to level with you. Many of these inconsistencies and bugs don't detract from the gameplay and are very insignificant. So why do I bother discussing them if they ultimately don't matter? Well, the reason I point out these seemingly menial details is because they are a symptom of a larger issue with how Epic views and handles the OG mode. It seems like the people responsible for this Chapter 1 mode have little to no passion for actually developing it. I mean, I don't know what other conclusion I meant to come to when something as simple as the AR icon has been fucked up for 3 seasons now. This is something that they could fix tomorrow if they actually cared. And it mainly bothers me because when something this simple has been blatantly broken for this long, it tells me that they aren't interested in addressing potentially larger issues with this mode. OG clearly was never meant to be anything more than a cash grab by Epic, and the bugs and inconsistencies are indicative of that. Chapter 1 returning again was just something that could cash in on some nostalgia bucks one last time. Before this mode was ever even announced, a creative map that surprisingly gained a lot of popularity was Rewind Royale by Panville. The thing that caught me off guard about this Chapter 1 creative map was how damn good it was. It was honestly insane how much they were able to get accurate using Epic's unfinished engine for Fortnite. Like, details that Epic themselves couldn't even be asked to get accurate, and I guarantee you if UEFN was actually the step up that it was labeled to be, it likely would have been one-to-one in many ways. Now, I recognize that Panville employs a very talented team, but how are you going to let a map creator using UEFN create a more accurate representation of the Chapter 1 island? The attention to detail within Rewind Royale was clearly born from a place of passion that was never afforded to the OG mode Epic made. This point is driven home by the fact that Chapter 1 recreations can't be monetized, so the only incentive for creating this map is from a place of passion, whereas Epic's interest in creating an OG mode is for the sake of monetary gain on their end. Stop complaining, of course Epic Games' incentive for making OG is to make money. Epic is a company after all, and they need to make money.
Shut the fuck up!
The problem is not that Epic Games wants to make money, it's that they only view Fortnite OG as something they can capitalize off of, and not a genuine way to grow their metaverse, and their poor development of this mode informs that truth. This mode's shortcomings honestly make me sad, because it neutered what should be a modernized time capsule of Chapter 1. It's especially painful because these flaws are not deep-rooted issues with the mode that would require fundamentally altering what Chapter 1 was. Bots did not exist during Chapter 1, and the game was far more engaging because of it. The 12-phase storm circle was not built for the OG island, and matches where you are left searching a vast safe zone for the few remaining players reflect that. Zero builds is handled so poorly that it feels like an afterthought, and the number of bugs and inconsistencies demonstrate Epic's disinterest and lack of passion for developing a Chapter 1 recreation. It hurts because these problems aren't difficult to rectify and many would only require simple tweaks or reverts. Chapter 1 Season 3 has by far the most well-rounded and entertaining loot pool yet, but isn't given the spotlight it deserves due to Epic's laziness and fear of deviating from features that reward participation. Chapter 1 may be heavily associated with nostalgia, but this mode's failure does not dictate the idea that that's all there was in the way of praise for this time period. Chapter 1 is unequivocally still this game's most healthy and true to its nature time period that Fortnite's Battle Royale has ever been. It's truly unfortunate that we might never get to re-experience these seasons as they were. The original Chapter 1 might have had its focus primarily on the boots-on-the-ground shooting game, not delivering on a more objective-based experience like today, but that was the beauty of it. Having an overabundance of AI roaming a massive safe circle indirectly kills what Chapter 1 stood for with its engaging and heavily weapon-based gameplay. The game might not have been perfect by any means, but at least it had a sense of authenticity. New weapon additions were actually interesting, loot pools didn't struggle nearly as much with diversity, content wasn't created to meet some quota, but rather for meaningful evolution, and the map evolved in a way that focused on improvement rather than just change. The primary audience that disagrees with these notions likely didn't get the opportunity to experience it, and unfortunately likely never will, because Fortnite's OG mode does not hold up.